enough time, you think? I think so. All right, 30 more seconds, and we'll share out. All right, we do a lot of work in regular ed, so when we prepared for this presentation, we wanted to look at different settings. And what might you be looking for? Because it's clear with Hattie's work as far as high yield strategies, but through this research, we're going to find out what is it that we need to have in our special inclusion classes. Go ahead, what did you see? What did you hear? What do you sense?
We're having the conversation about, with different activities and developmental levels, and it's thinking about going in there and having an idea of what you're looking for looks like. So what would engagement look like in this context? Yep. And how much do I know about that so I can really observe it? And, some people default to, well, they were sitting quietly, so they were engaged. Well, that's not necessarily, that's behavioral engagement, and that's it. So we don't know about those other pieces. So I think it's, we're talking about that need for calibration and knowing what you look for before you go in and look.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Others? Over here. Thank you, Kristin.
Yeah, it was very similar. It's hard to know what you're looking at. Truthfully, you're kind of doing a lot of inferring, but you don't truly know. That calibration is really important.
Sure, absolutely. Others, right here.
We were having a hard time understanding what was happening in the bottom left picture because we wondered if that was a conversation between the two students that was being facilitated, but in that case the students would be toward each other, but there is an augmentative communication device there, so some kind of communication is happening.
The red box.
Yeah, the red box, yeah.
Interesting. Anybody else? All right, let's segue, and I'm going to turn it over to Kristin so she can talk about the project and its goals.
So hi, good afternoon, and virtual folks, thank you for joining. I'm Kristin Brooks, Executive Director with the Riverside County Office of Ed, and I work alongside two other directors leading a project across California to increase inclusion and achievement for students with disabilities. Although it's out of the special ed division, we're talking about including all students. So we're talking about students with disabilities, students of color, students of poverty, foster youth, the whole 9 yards. So what we wanted to design not only would support students with disabilities and reaching high levels, but also just really all kids. So whatever we create, we wanted to be able to roll out across the gamut, right? Across all age levels. So, oh yes, please, thank you. Look, he lets me be in charge. So my little section of today is just to talk a little bit about the project and create that connection between digiCOACH and what we're doing across the state, and why our partnership with digiCOACH has been so important when we look at things like Hattie's research and we look at how can we take it from a macro to a micro level, because what we roll out, we want to make sure gets down to students, right? And so I'm going to try to make that connection here for you today. So here's kind of what to expect just out of my couple sections. Talking a little bit about the project, the elements that we're focusing on, our logic model, our blueprint, which you guys have a copy of if you didn't pick that up already here, and then really how we apply digiCOACH. Okay. So our project mission in supporting inclusive practices is providing technical assistance to districts across California. And we're really working on building, implementing, sustaining, and scaling up programs and supports for kids through shared leadership across the organization. All right, so leadership being at all levels. So these are really our project focus and our mission. So we're looking at the state performance plan indicators 3, 5, 6, and 7. So inclusion and achievement, again, students with disabilities. The primary target these last couple years has been preschool to 3rd, but that doesn't mean that we are stopping at 3rd, right? We're just really focusing on early education, but bridging that across all grade levels. And then again, increasing opportunities for students with disabilities. And the elements that we have to our project are out of Booth and Ainsco's work out of the UK, but really applies, again, across the US, across any educational organization. When we're talking about inclusion, we need the culture of inclusion as the foundation. And you guys will probably love it, the triangle, right? California uses triangles for everything, right? So it only fit every other initiative we have in California. But the culture of inclusion, and you can't have successful programs and supports for kids without all three of these, but really culture at the base. Are we walking the talk and talking the talk? Do we believe that all kids can learn at high levels? Or do we believe that only some kids can learn some of the way, right? So really building that culture around, we're all in this together, kids at high levels, and everything we do is student-centered, right? And the why behind our work. Once we have that culture, then we can create those policies and those practices to support that, right? So policies around how we organize our systems, how we run our meetings, how we roll out our curriculum, and then the practice. What are we really doing in the classroom? Do we have UDL as a framework for our students? Do we have mismatched curriculum that we say we're just going to modify for this student here and this student here and this student here? Are we really trying to meet the needs of all learners in practice? Again, leadership at the center. So these are really the elements of inclusion within our project. The handout that you have in virtual, folks, you have this in your electronic copies as well, as also on our Padlet. So if that link isn't there for you, we'll be sure to provide that for you. So if you guys aren't familiar with a logic model, it really is kind of a crosswalk and the purpose behind our work, right? So we have our inputs and activities. So our inputs, our partners would be digiCOACH as one of them, as well as a couple of university partners, San Francisco State in the north and University of Redlands in the south. And this project is supported by the California Department of Ed alongside 2 county offices, so El Dorado County in the north, Riverside County in the south. We also have roughly 32 districts participating in this project right now. We have representatives here today, awesome. We have Tuolumne County, we have Sanger, we have Pleasanton in the room, and then of course, probably some virtual folks. In terms of activities, we do in-person, we do webinars, several events, really in an organic way and meeting the needs of our districts. So if our folks say, we need help with UDL, we need help with co-teaching, we need help with our why, we need a data dive, we need help with root cause analysis, whatever it might be, we have those on the ground in the trenches work. That work is happening as well. So we have exemplar sites throughout the state in different regions. So of the 11 regions, we're reaching across the state. And those exemplars either have met or exceeded those indicators, or who have shown exemplary practices toward inclusion and achievement for students. And then they're assigned to different, quote, improvement LEAs across the districts, or across the state, to serve as mentors in this work. So carrying out the culture, policy, and practice piece. We have quarterly meetings, we have data discussions, we go through improvement processes in terms of plan, do, study, act, that sort of thing. I won't get into that, we can share that at some other point if you guys have questions. But our outcomes are both at the organizational level and at the classroom level, right? When we talk about that policy and practice piece, we want to see those policies around inclusion happening at the organizational level, but then what are those outcomes looking like, again, in the classrooms? And then kind of our map, or how we're going to get there. So we start with, our envisioning and our leadership, communicating clarity of purpose and urgency around that. We talk a lot about inclusion, right? And we say we need to do things better, we need to do things differently. But where's our sense of urgency? Sometimes we have really nice mission and vision statements, or really nice action plans, but how is that really rolling out? And again, getting down to the student level. And getting those early adopters. I know James talked this morning about the diffusion of innovation, if you know Everett Rogers' work. And so roughly, 16% of the folks are going to be your early adopters. And so really getting that ball rolling, not waiting for the laggards to come on board. Building those practices and those policies, implementing them, scaling them up, and then paying it forward. So when I talked about exemplar districts and improvement districts, some of our exemplar folks used to be our improvement folks, right? They had lower LRE numbers or lower achievement numbers, and then through this project have built their own capacity and increased their numbers and have become exemplars that are now paying it forward to other districts. So really the purpose of our work is going from an existing organization to an inclusive organization. A lot of what we do is around change management. And so that's why we have our logic model and our blueprint, and that's why we've included digiCOACH. So through change management, we need tools, right? We need to collect data around what we're doing. We need to know that what we're what we're presenting in professional development and on-site supports is really translating again into how it's impacting students. Let me back up. In the center here, you guys have that handout, and I believe Brandon's going to go in much more detail around this matrix. But digiCOACH as a data collection classroom walkthrough tool, we've customized our look-fors, what we're looking for when we're looking at evidence of what's happening in the classroom, using this matrix that is, roughly 75% universal design for learning based. So he's going to go into that in more detail. But just quickly, outcomes of our project. Our districts participate in 3-year cohorts, and so it's hard to see probably in the back or virtually here, but exemplar group on the left, first year in the Supporting Inclusive Practice project in the middle, and then third year on the right. And so we're looking at change around indicator 5, which is least restrictive environment, and including students in regular education 80% or more of the day. And so you can see that our districts are moving, the change is great. So if you guys are familiar with the indicators, state of California is looking at a change of roughly 4% across 5 years. So from 2013 to 2018, looking at going from a 49% rate to a 52% rate. Whereas our districts are moving, on average, over 3 years, 12%, right? So we're seeing great gains. And then this is what we want to see with the data on indicator 5A, which is students in regular class less than 40% of the time. We want to see that as a negative change, right? And so we're even seeing our exemplar folks are making change. You would think, well, they've already met or exceeded, but even they're still continuing to move because even as James mentioned this morning, it's not a destination, it's a journey. We never really stop improving, right? So some of our grantees, if you can see here, this has actually changed even in this last week because Tuolumne is not even on here yet. But just some of our folks we work with across the state. And so I'm going to turn it over to Brandon just to give some more explanation. But what I wanted to highlight in my section is just what's happening in California around inclusion and achievement, and what are some of those strategies and tools that we're utilizing to not only get the message out, but take data around what we're doing and making sure that it's not just a shiny object over here, that it's something that's really impacting kids on a student level. And so that's what's been so great about our partnership with digiCOACH, and we appreciate it so much. So I'm going to turn it over to Brandon.
Thank you, Kristin. It's been a pleasure, really. It's been a lot of fun to work with so many different districts and bring on all these different partners, work with Kristin, work with University of Redlands, and put these frameworks together. So I get to kind of tie everything together here. We'll see how well I do with the clicker. I'm not a big fan of these, but I think I'll be all right. I'm going to have to go up there at some point to show you the real stuff. So Doug talked a little bit about the technology side. I'm going to get a little deeper into it, but just wanted to remind you guys that feedback is powerful. You know, we know that from Hattie's research. We know that from more recent research, Bloomberg and Pittsburgh here. Getting into classrooms, giving feedback to your teachers can really help be that springboard to that collective action. And we think digiCOACH really helps set that process in motion. So this is kind of the walkthrough cycle that we look at with digiCOACH. We start up top with our focused walkthroughs. If you've had a chance to look at that matrix that we passed out, and we'll look a little bit closer in a moment, I don't have to go into the classroom and try to find all 20 of these things when I go in there. Instead, I can set a focus and say, you know what, I only want to go in and look at the behavior today. I only want to go in and look at engagement. So I can establish that focus ahead of time. And you'll see in a moment that digiCOACH allows you to be pretty flexible about what you're actually looking for in the classroom. As I do those focused walkthroughs, I'm going to be collecting some observational data, and I'm also going to be coaching my teacher. And what's really cool is we're going to keep track of how you coach your teacher, and that data can then help drive those collaborative conversations, your PLCs, staff meetings, whatever you want to call them. That data can help drive those conversations in those meetings, and then decide, okay, what type of professional development might be needed. So your teachers can have input in there. Do I need to go, to the Inclusion Collaborative Conference next year? Do I need to go down to an AVID workshop in San Diego? Or what is that I need? And then we think it's really, really important to tie that PD, once it's taken place, back into your walkthroughs. If we don't go in and support those teachers on those new strategies, we tend to kind of fall back into our comfort zones and just do what we've always done. So we think it's really important for you to go in and help support those. And what's kind of cool about digiCOACH is these look-fors that we've set up ahead of time help you support that PD. So you may not be an expert in inclusion, but you can go in as a coach or a principal and help support your teachers with these strategies. Or if we're looking at AVID strategies, you can do the same. If you're looking at UDL, whatever it may be. What's really cool, if you start looking around some of the research that can support that collective teacher efficacy at your campuses, these are strategies that help you do that. Getting teachers into classrooms with each other, letting them do those peer evaluations, letting them have those experiences in other classrooms. So we think digiCOACH is really kind of uniquely poised to help grow that collective teacher efficacy at your campus. So Doug mentioned earlier there's 3 parts to the walkthrough system with digiCOACH. It starts first on your phone or your tablet. We keep it informal. So you go in with a simple mobile device, and you're able to collect the data when you're in the classroom there and coach the teacher. All that data, though, is then uploaded to digicoach.com, so all that reporting is available cloud-based. You can come back to your computer, disaggregate it to your heart's content, and be able to actually print that information out. So this is an example of what digiCOACH looks like when you're using that Supporting Inclusive Practices edition that we've built. Usually with digiCOACH, to keep it on the more informal coaching side of things, we set up walkthroughs on a observed, not observed, or yes, no, I saw it or I didn't. In this particular case, we wanted to have a little bit better, deeper data, let's call it. This information at the end of the year last year was exported out, and we passed it over to University of Redlands. They started doing deeper disaggregations, comparing that with the outcomes that we're seeing from the districts, as well as pre and post surveys that were asked to the teachers and things like that. So we had a lot of information that we were able to incorporate into that report to the state. So that was the first year. We're hoping to see even bigger gains, or start to see those gains, and hopefully digiCOACH is helping support those things along this whole project. So you can see they're pretty similar, whether I'm using it on a tablet or on a phone. And it's a little hard to read, but the blue buttons there are saying exemplar, evident, emerging, or not evident. The second part of digiCOACH is going to be that feedback system. So a little bit different between the phone and the tablet. Obviously the phone, we have a little smaller real estate, so I have to work, we have to not work harder, but we have to go into the strategies or coaching tips button to find those statements. But as you'll see in a moment when I go live, up at the top half of the iPad there, those are pre-written strategies that help the principal or help the coach give explicit feedback tied to those UDL strategies, or tied to your AVID strategies, your Common Core, whatever you're working on. As you give that feedback, digiCOACH does some pretty cool things. It keeps track of every individual statement you use with that teacher. So you're going to know if you've coached somebody or praised somebody on a specific strategy before, and that's actually collectively reported. So if you're going into classrooms and it's more than just you supporting your teachers, I might be going in and Doug's going in next week, Doug would see a little 1 next to those statements if I praised them, excuse me. So we're going to keep track right there, and then that's actually going to go into one of our reports and show you, okay, school-wide, what are the things we're praising and coaching most frequently. Now, if you haven't had a chance to look in your packouts today, and it was available virtually as well, is our Inclusive Practices edition. And as Kristin mentioned a moment ago, the kind of upper right-hand corner, a good chunk of this matrix is the UDL framework. So we had reached out, Kristin actually reached out for us and got permission to embed that in there. So we have that since it's a key component to those inclusive strategies that we're doing with the grant. And what's cool is we've created those strategies and coaching tips that align with that. And that's kind of an ongoing process. We hope to be adding more along the line, or down the road, I should say. Not only do we have our SIP edition here, we kind of jokingly say another day, another edition. We're often customizing districts and schools, but what we have done along the road is create different editions. I know this is kind of hard to read, so I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of some of our most popular ones. The Classroom Instruction Edition up there in the top left, that was the first one we built, and there's handouts of these editions, I should say, as well in your packets if you wanted to look a little bit more closely. But our Classroom Edition, that was the first one we built, pulled from different researchers, Marzano, Selecti, Smoker, Popham, and we said, what does a good all-around instructional walkthrough look like? We put that together, we introduced digiCOACH to the world back in 2012, and we said, everyone's gonna love this, this is perfect, no one's gonna need anything else. Wow, we were wrong. Okay, so quickly we realized everyone needs to kind of customize and do their own thing. So what we've done is continue to build new editions to help support that customization process. As you saw a moment ago, all of our look-fors have strategies and coaching tips for them. And that goes for all of these editions and beyond. So we have things to support the TPEs. We have things to support the CSTPs. We have Common Core standards in there. We have things to support our early childhood with our preschool edition. That edition there up in the top right, that was built with one of our partners, Romoland, the preschool director there, and our team got together and started putting together something to support them. PBIS is kind of blowing up everywhere. We're seeing more and more schools adopt those PBIS strategies, so we have a positive behavior edition to support that. We've been doing some research with Oxnard Unified School District, and we've put together our college prep edition there in the middle. Those are tied closely to strategies you'd see within an AVID program. So they're kind of the Whittaker strategies infused in there. We've been asking AVID out for a date for a while, and she invited us down to her summer institute and recently included us in one of her what are they called? Like newsletters. I don't know. I'm trying to like an email blast. So digiCOACH was included as like a resource for their schools, which was pretty cool. We're excited about that. So hopefully one day us and AVID will have an official partnership. But until then, we have our college prep to help support their program. And then that last one, their career pathways. This was built in partnership with Rancho Campagna High School, brand new high school built around academies. And so this is designed to capture that kind of cradle to career or linked to learning framework. Another cool project that we just kicked off, Doug mentioned we're doing stuff around induction. So we have student teachers, interns, and new teacher induction. This is an edition that we built. It's huge. There's 36 look-fors in here. We're not doing a 10-minute walkthrough with this. Instead, Cal State San Bernardino support providers are actually going into classrooms, spending an hour or so with the student teachers or their interns, and looking for these things to take place. And again, there's feedback in here, so we're helping those support providers. We're making their jobs easier, really. They're able to go in, collect some data, and then the teachers actually have, the student teachers, the interns, have the ability to go in and look at this information and say, okay, what are they seeing in my practice? Before, they were doing that with a piece of paper, and they had to try to digitize that online, and it was kind of a clunky process. So when we were working with them, one of the professors there was like, that's the best freaking thing I've ever seen, which was heartwarming. So we've got a couple editions there. But what we typically do is say, okay, what's most important? What are the strategies that you guys are working on? What does your LCAP have in it? What are you guys looking there? What are you doing with your school dashboard? And pull together a blended or new edition that supports what you guys are doing at your schools, at your districts, at your counties. Any questions so far there on kind of the foundations of things? I'm going to jump into the live demo here if you haven't seen it. All right. Any questions virtually? I won't answer them, but you're welcome to ask them. All right, so I've actually got my iPad connected here, and hopefully I am connected to the internet for one part of the demo. One thing really cool about digiCOACH is you don't have to be connected to the Wi-Fi to do a walkthrough. You only need to be online at 3 times. The very first time you log in, it downloads everything it needs, so it's on the Wi-Fi then. You can then go out to your classrooms, your campuses. If you lose cell phone reception, you lose Wi-Fi, it's not a big deal. You're not going to lose your walk. So if you've ever used like an online form tool and you hit submit and your Wi-Fi lost and you hit back and your form's empty, not going to happen with digiCOACH. If I want to look at my reports, that does require Wi-Fi since those are cloud-based. And when I'm ready to sync my walkthroughs, when I hit that orange sync and send, I would need to be online at that so that it can actually upload it to the cloud. So let's go ahead and do a new walk. I'm going to go ahead and hit the green new walk button there in the top left corner. And over on the left side, we have some drop downs that I need to use before I can start my actual walkthrough. So I'm going to show you both the SIP and our classroom instruction edition. I'll show you our classroom one first, since that's on like the more informal true-false. So that first drop down that says classroom, that's our different editions. And districts can have multiple editions. So you can have one focused on instruction, one focused on special ed, one focused on behavior. It's flexible in that way. I'm at Adams USD, just a fictitious school district over at Lincoln Elementary. We ask you to send us a list of your teachers' names and emails. So all you have to do is essentially log in, select your teacher, what subject they're teaching. So we're going to go into a science lesson, and it's a group of 4th grade students. If I want there where it says observer notes, that's just a private little box I can use. Maybe it's a volcano lesson. I could type in there, volcano lesson, or I could reference an NGSS standard if I wanted to. I'll leave it blank for now. And I'm going to start my walkthrough. So I'm going to hit the big green start button there. Up in the top right corner, you'll notice the timer's kicked in. So digiCOACH will let you know how long you've been in the classroom, and that's going to power one of our reports that's going to let you see which teachers have you visited recently, how much time have you spent in their classrooms, when was the last time you were there, things like that. So it makes it really easy to see who do you need to go out and support. The 5 focus areas, so each column within digiCOACH, if you go back to the matrix there, oops, rotate that back. So we're looking at different look fors, but each column in here we call a focus area, and then each question is a look for. So when you're using digiCOACH, each look for is broken down onto one page at a time, essentially. So our focus areas are spread out across the bottom on the iPad. If I wanted to jump over to the learning environment page, I could just tap that button, it'll take me right there. Here's our 4 look fors: room environment, procedures, management, and relationships. Now you'll notice that little yellow button next to each of those questions says skip. Now if you recall when I first started talking about digiCOACH earlier around those focused walkthroughs, I don't have to go in and try to find all 20 things. Instead, I can come in with a predetermined focus. And we encourage you to talk to your teachers and say, okay, look, this is what we're supporting you on. What do you want us to support you on this month or this week? What do you want me to come in and look for? Can we, how can I help, basically? So today, let's look at the 3 R's and checking for understanding. So again, we walked into this classroom, it's a science lesson, and the teacher had some really good relationships. The interactions between the teacher and the student were positive. So I would just tap that button one time, and that says I saw it. Look for it, it was there. I'll slide over to the left, and we're looking at rigor. Was the lesson complex and appropriately challenging, meeting the needs of all students? You know what, the teacher was showing a video clip of some of the lava flows happening in Hawaii right now, but the students were just kind of working on a pretty basic worksheet, just a basic questionnaire. So I'm gonna say I didn't really see the lesson to the highest rigor that I might have liked to see. And you know what, differentiation wasn't part of our walkthrough, but I might mark that I didn't see that as well. So I'm not limited to my focus, I can expand on it as I go. And as you become more familiar with these look fors, it makes it really easy. You don't even have to read these definitions. You just know, okay, yeah, I didn't see differentiation. Literacy was there, but I wanted to see better organizer use and things like that. I'll jump over to engagement. 4th one down again, relevance, where students participating in tasks with real-world applications related to personal experience and interests. You know what? At least it was modern. It was current. We're talking about volcanoes. It is still going off over there. We don't talk about it on the news anymore. But it was current, and maybe the teacher was kind of relating to how the volcanoes shape our Earth and things like that. So I'll say I did see relevance. Slide over one more. We're looking at the checking for understanding. Maybe she paused the video a couple times. There was some questioning, good wait time. But some students had some questions, and she really didn't give them any feedback or adjustment. She kind of just said, well, let's see if the video covers it, and hit play. Now this information is private for you guys. We don't send the checklist data to the teacher. It's not included to the email. And that was done by design. We didn't want the conversation to become just around what I saw or what I didn't see. Think about if you're grading a student's paper and it wasn't the best paper, you put a D up in that corner and you write a lot of constructive notes there. That student may look at the paper and just go, I got a D, whatever, and throw it to the side. So we didn't want that to happen with the teachers. Instead, we wanted them to focus more on the coaching conversation that digiCOACH allows you to have. So to create that coaching email, I'm going to hit that green feedback button there towards the bottom of the screen, and that pulls up our email tool. Bottom half of the screen, pretty basic. It's a regular email. It's ready to go to Maria here. I'm logged in as demo@digicoach.com. It's going to automatically CC me, so an email is going to land in my own inbox. We actually send the email from our server, so you don't even have to worry about setting up your IMAP clients and crazy, it just works. We put a little subject, instructional feedback with the date and time. It's got a little customizable statement there at the bottom. Thanks for allowing me to come to your classroom today. Up top is where the real magic is. So strategies and coaching tips there in the top left. Right now we're looking at the strategies. And again, these are those praise or reinforcements. They're written to say, when you did this, students responded this way. And there's tons of them in there. So I can scroll through and scroll through. Rather than trying to find something by just scrolling forever, I like to filter using the different focus area buttons. So if I tap on learning environment, there's those 4 look fors again. And relationships has a little check mark. That's reminding me that I saw it earlier. So I tap on relationships. And now what that has done is narrow this list of feedback to just those 10, 15 or so statements. These are short little descriptions. There was some counterproductive behavior happening there. Teacher handled it well. So if I tap on that, it gives me a preview of the full statement. When students are seeking attention in a counterproductive way, you used alternative methods to redirect behavior and maintain structure. If I like that statement, I want to use it, I just hit the insert button and it gets added to my email there at the bottom. We'll give another praise statement here in the area of relevance. I've actually praised Maria here once before about using introductory video clips and relating to current events. So similar things to what we saw happening again today in this lesson. So maybe I could scroll through and look for some other things. Actually, I see an ELD statement in there, and that reminds me, we have a filter up in this top right corner. So if I hit that filter, I can narrow down to different types of statements within these look-fors. So if I wanted to look at just those English language learner strategies, I can tap that. And now that's narrowed in this particular area to just 4 statements. These EL statements come from a 3-year, 6-county study called the Promise Initiative. Erin Mason was actually on our team. She left San Bernardino County and joined our team. We said, Erin, go grab that research, that 275-page binder, and let's put that into action. So that research is right there embedded within digiCOACH. So maybe the making connections to their personal experiences, maybe we saw some of that happening. When you had students identify connections to their own experiences, as you read to them, you promoted their attention and focus. Now that one says as you read to them, so I might want to go in there and take out that as you read, so I can modify that statement and make it my own. Tweak it a little bit, as you reviewed the video. So you can make these your own. You're not limited to just that pre-written, standard feedback. We typically recommend kind of 3 strategies and 1 coaching tip, reinforcing a thing, similar that you might do if you're coaching, a basketball or football. So let's go ahead and jump over to a coach tip. We've only done 1 so far, but I'll switch to coaching there in the top. And you know what? I'm actually going to choose that same one just so you can see a preview around, what did I do? I did making connections, right? Or did I do, I don't remember what I did. I'm just going to click one. Sorry about that. So note the language. These aren't meant to be an I got you. These are meant to be positive in nature. They're written by teachers and educators through the lens of how would you want this to land in your own inbox? To make the lesson meaningful for the students, relate the lesson to students' personal life experiences. Real short, simple, explicit. Try doing this to have students respond this way. Again, I'll insert that and it's added to my email. Of course, I can write my own feedback in there, so I can go in there, write my own custom notes. If you are connected to the Wi-Fi and you and Siri are friends, or you and Google if you're on an Android device, tap the little microphone. Great lesson today, Maria, I really liked that graphic organizer you were using during your video activity, period. Please send me a copy so I can share it at the next staff meeting, period. Not the best reception in here, but it's getting there.
It's slow, but it worked.
It did. Got there. If you're on your phone and you're walking classroom to classroom, it makes it really convenient to kind of quickly personalize that message. It automatically adds your signature, so you don't even have to worry about doing that. If I was done at this point with my walkthrough, I just hit the complete walkthrough button there in the bottom right corner, and it's going to save that walk back to my device. So I'm going to go and complete this one. And say OK. It lets me know it's going to save it there, and it reminds me to tap sync and send. So the teacher hasn't gotten that feedback. The data's not in the cloud. And you can see I actually have 3 walkthroughs in green there on the far right. They say ready to send. So I have 3 walks. I haven't sent these yet. Some principals like to wait till the end of the school day before they send the feedback. We typically encourage giving them that immediate feedback. They want to know what they saw. Doug, when he was an administrator, walked around with Post-it notes. That actually kind of led to the idea of keeping track of what feedback of your statement. Otherwise, you might write the identical feedback on 2 Post-it notes. True story. Those statements that are ready to send, I can put those on hold. So if I tap that ready to send button, it's just a little toggle switch. So maybe the walkthrough, you can see I actually have one way back from October 12th. I took a little bit more time on that email, maybe longer than I should have. I finally finished it, so I set it back to send. I'm done with these. I want the teachers to get their feedback, so I just hit sync and send up top there, and it's now uploading that data to the cloud, immediately available for me in our reporting system. Emails getting sent off to them. Any questions so far on the walkthrough side of things? Hopefully you see it's pretty powerful, but easy to use. Virtually? Crickets? No.
I know, right?
You're not allowed to jump in.
I've got a microphone.
This is my part.
No, no, just to piggyback the way that we utilized it too is some districts were like, ooh, I don't know that I'm ready for the coaching and the feedback part yet. I'm still kind of getting a handle on using the tool and doing walkthroughs and how much time I'm spending and collecting that type of data. And so our look-fors within the SIP edition are either NA, evident, not evident, exemplar.
Here they are.
Yep, and so he's going to get into that. But some of our users were just new to this. And so again, they would just do walkthroughs and collect their own data about what they were seeing and then calibrate that. So maybe 2 folks were going in and they were rating and then get back together and say, did we see the same thing before we start giving coaching and feedback, right? So just depending on kind of the level of user, that's the option too. So as Brandon's going through this, you don't have to do coaching and feedback out the gate, right? You can just start calibrating together in your teams. Side note.
Thank you. So yeah, what that might look like with the SIP edition here. So maybe I'm going in and I'm seeing those strategies happening. We're looking at the room environment, where it does include intentionally designed spaces for collaborative and individual learning activities. Well, you know what? I'm new to the SIP edition. I don't know what that means. Soup, computer went to sleep. Sorry about that. And make sure we're good virtually. All right. So I may be new to this. I may not know what these look-fors are yet, right? When it's first starting out, especially if I've never been trained around inclusive practices. So what we've done to try to help with this edition is we've included pop-ups. So you see that little blue evident there at the end of room environment. If I click on that, there's an enhanced definition of what I would expect to see taking place. Within our college prep edition that supports those Whittaker strategies, we have tons of these pop-ups infused in there as well. And they really help kind of support. They become a kind of a cheat sheet. If I don't know how these things should look, here's some examples, and I kind of become a little instant expert, so to speak. So just like on the other edition, you would just be tapping on these things as you see them happening, swiping left and right, up and down to navigate between the different areas. So pretty simple, similar to navigate. Feedback, just like on the other one, I can come in there. If I wanted to look at some of those UDL statements, they're the ones that are identified with the little asterisks there. Maybe I wanted to give some praise around recruiting interest. I'll select that first one, fostering individual choice. You promoted autonomy by providing learning options and authentic situations for each student to choose and explore. So same concept that I showed you just a moment with the classroom one, but just more specialized and focused on inclusive practices that we would want to see happening in our classrooms.
How much do you recommend that that individualized feedback is given in addition to this, the sort of canned plug-in statement, like a sentence immediately after the canned statement that says, for example, Johnny.
That you promoted autonomy by
Yeah.
providing learning options?
Right.
So a perfect question. So let me just make sure I understand. How much should I rely on the standardized feedback versus providing my own? It's really up to you and the teacher in that walkthrough ultimately. If that teacher needs some additional feedback or you feel like these things need some additional explaining, then absolutely click in there, write some more feedback. The app is able to keep track of the use of those pre-written statements, but not able to keep track of your own feedback. Now, that said, we can customize that feedback. So if you find yourself repeating yourself over and over, we can add new statements into this library if you do a custom edition. And that can be ongoing. We kind of provide an upfront library for you to start with. 2 months down the road, you call me up and say, hey, we're always repeating ourselves. We can put it in there and make it a button. But absolutely, we do recommend having kind of a mixture of your own personalized feedback with the use of those pre-written statements. Does it save a copy of the email that you send? Good question. So the question is, does it save a copy of the email that you send? It's saved in a few places. The walkthrough that I complete on my iPad, let me go and complete this one. On the left side there, you can see it says View. So I can go back onto my iPad here and I can review those walks that I've completed. Now, we don't have a report on our website, and that was built, so we're California-based. We're built within the California environment, and so we wanted to make sure this wasn't being used for evaluations. We kind of shied away that. When we first built digiCOACH and rolled it out, they were actually kind of like a Snapchat. When you hit sync, they deleted off your iPad, it went to the teacher, and that was it. That's changed over time, though. People said, hey, I want to be able to review that email. I want to be able to pull it back up with the teacher. So we do capture it on the back end. We just don't have a report on our website just yet. But they're there. If you said, hey, I need some walks, I lost them on my iPad, I can't find them for some reason, we have the ability to back them up and pull them out for you. Any questions? Did I leave anything out on this side of things? All right, well, let's look at some data. So I'm going to have a seat here. I can hit the reports button there, and it loads me directly into the report portal. I've preloaded some today since the Wi-Fi wasn't the fastest. And so these are running through Google Chrome now rather than the web browser, or excuse me, using my web browser rather than the app. And I'll make these a little larger for you. So 10 pre-built reports. Far left there we have our summary reports. These are going to give you a bird's eye view of all your walkthroughs that you've completed. Makes it easy to see where might be some hot points. Comparison reports are going to make it easy to compare across different campuses, grade levels, or subject departments. Coaching reports are going to let you look at the usage of those strategies and coaching tips. So we're going to be able to look a little bit more deeper into that. And then the actual usage reports, that's going to show you which teachers you visited, who's out doing walkthroughs, kind of what I mentioned earlier. So first one I'm going to show you is that focus area summary. Oops. This one here. And it looks like this. So real simple, easy to use bar graphs. Below the bar graph, we can see we've done a total of 273 walkthroughs. This is going back to that classroom edition, the first walkthrough I showed you. So we're looking at engagement, checking for understanding, schema, cognition, and learning environment. When we've gone into our classrooms those 270 odd times, we saw those 4 engagement strategies happening about 70% of the time. Well, what's that mean? Well, if I click on that, it expands out and reveals that specific data. So now I know when I've gone in, move that back there so you can see what relevance is as well. What have we seen? Well, we're seeing interaction pretty frequently, about 67% of the time, pretty close to Hattie's sweet spot, I think. But if I had to pick something here, maybe pacing. Maybe we want to look for, what can we do to support our teachers with a little bit more appropriate pacing. I'll go ahead and jump back. I'll just click through a couple others here. Maybe I want to look at checking for understanding. Feedback, not seeing it only half the time. And adjustment, only 37% of the time did we see those lessons adjust. Now up top there, you see some orange buttons. We can disaggregate this data however you want. So if you want to look at a specific grade level, you can come here and say, you know what, just show me my 3rd grade team. Filter down to that. If you want to look at just a specific department or subject, same thing. Show me my English language arts. So when you started that walkthrough and you selected the teacher, grade, and subject, that's powering these reports. We automatically capture the time and the observer for you. You are able to look by individual teacher or groups of teachers if you want as well. But as I mentioned, by time. So by default, we're putting together every walkthrough into this. The way we kind of look at it, one walkthrough is one snapshot in time, one 5 to 10 minute photo snapshot. We take all those photos, put them in our reports, and create a photo album. If I wanted to, maybe we went out and we did instructional rounds. We visited, I went to 10 classrooms today and Doug went to 10 classrooms, sorry. We can come back, say, show me just the walks from this current day, rerun that and get a quick snapshot. Of course, you can do things like date ranges and stuff like that. And then every observer that's using digiCOACH is going into this bucket. So this is everybody's walks, making it real quick and easy. You're not having to go back and pile through paper and see, okay, what did I see, what did Jamie see, what did Doug see? It's there. It makes it real quick and easy for you. Of course, I can disaggregate down, though, if I want to see just my walks versus just Doug's walks, I can do that. Look for comparison report. If I wanted to look at each school site, each grade level, I could use those check boxes and say, show me, who we got here? Show me Jefferson High School, show me Lincoln Elementary. But what I like to do is first look at the comparison, because that can kind of call those trends out and see what's happening across our board. Over on the left there, you can see right now we're comparing it by school at a district level. But if I wanted to look at my grades, I can just rerun this report and hope for good Wi-Fi. There we go. So now we have each grade level. Would I print this out and hand it to my teachers? Probably not. I don't want to single out anybody. So we'd want to go back and use that summary report and say, okay, 3rd grade team, here's what we see, versus, here you go, everybody. You may not make any friends that way. And I can quickly continue to scroll through here. This is at a district level, so we've got some district-wide data going on. Pre-K is doing really good. They're hitting it out of the park, 100% across the board. Probably haven't done a lot of walks there yet. All right, next report here. I think I have our coaching summary pulled up. I do. Go me. All right, this one's brand new. So we actually got funding from this with our project with San Bernardino County, Riverside County, and Cal State San Bernardino to build this. And the idea was, how can we quickly marry the usage of those strategies and coaching tips with our scores? So we have a table view. If you're more of a table person, this is the report for you. If you like the bar graphs, then the ones we were looking at a moment ago. If we look at the second row there, task, that's the very first question that we saw. And we saw it about 80% of the time under that score column. The first number, That's the actual frequency that I've included at my walk. Remember, I can skip things. So if I come and I look at this report and I see that I've skipped something, the flip side, I've only included it as a focus of my walkthrough 10% of the time, we'd want to look at that and say, well, why aren't we looking for task, or why aren't we looking for that particular element? Maybe it's just something we haven't gotten to yet. It's more of a tier 2 strategy, and we're starting tier 1, and we're looking for these kind of foundational things. Or maybe it's foundational and it's there in its place, and we're not having to look for it anymore. We'd probably want to pull that out of the custom edition, put something new that's more meaningful that you can support your teachers with there. On the right side, though, there's our strategies and coaching tips. So as I've been using those pre-written statements, the system's been keeping track. And the darker colors help kind of draw your eye to where you're praising or coaching more frequently. So if you notice in the first grouping, relevance, we've actually praised 63 times in the area of relevance. Second one there, under checking for understanding, there in the bottom right, you can see we've actually coached 94 times in the area of adjustment, which makes sense. We're only seeing adjustment taking place 37% of the time. Now I can get even deeper into these strategies and coaching tips. So instead of just looking at that summary, we can go to our detail, and this now gives me a breakdown of all of those statements I've used. So this is the power of using those pre-written statements. Again, we aren't able to keep track of those customized ones, otherwise this would be a giant mess, just database-wise. But we have all those pre-written ones. And what's cool is if you modify those statements, we still keep track that you used it. So you can tweak those pre-written ones, and it's going to still show up in here that you used that kind of essence of the statement, so to speak. Over here on the right side, you can see we've got strategies or coaching tips. So if I scroll down here, this is a coaching tip. And I've supported 6 times, I've supported teachers with that statement. So we call it the dosage. How often have you used that statement? And I want to know which teachers I've actually supported. I click that little 6 there, and I can see now. So it's actually not 6 teachers, it's only 4. 2 of them have received that feedback twice. If you're going in to work with one specific teacher, use those filters up top, narrow down to one teacher there, and get a quick summary of every walkthrough you've done in their classroom. If you're going out to coach them, same type of thing. If you wanted to give 3rd grade their data, like we were talking with the bar graphs, do the same thing. Come up here, narrow this down to just 3rd grade, scroll to the bottom, you can see there's a whole bunch in here, and rerun that report. And then now I have a snapshot of the feedback I've given to my 3rd grade team. Go Wi-Fi. Excuse me. There we go. So there's just 3rd grade. So again, really, really cool ways that you can disaggregate and start to use this data. Last one I'll show you is our frequency detail. This one's more towards like the housekeeping side of things. Far left over there, the first column, we can see every teacher. And this is going to let you know how many times were you in their classroom. What's the average length of time? So Maria there, we visited her twice. We're in her classroom about 12.5 minutes. Most recently, we were in her classroom back on the 23rd. And that first row there, we show the average score. So she's scoring a little bit lower than our school-wide average. She's at 42%. Our school-wide or our district-wide is at a 63. Now we have not a ton of data. We don't have coaches or peers using this account. But what I could actually do is customize these headings. So instead of having all my admin there, all my coaches, all my peers, I could put just me in one column, just Chris, just LaFay, and then rerun this report and say, okay, well, who's actually getting out and supporting these teachers? Who's going to those classrooms? And if you imagine on that percentage column, imagine I went into Maria's classroom and I scored her about 40, and Doug's going in and he's scoring her in the 80s. Well, we may be uncalibrated, if we're at that big of a spread. Now, that doesn't tell you everything. You would probably want to look a little bit closer into the reports, maybe that coaching summary, and say, well, Doug looked at engagement and I looked at behavior. Okay, then it makes sense that we're not calibrated or that we're seeing different things. We looked for different things. But if we're looking on the same things, then that's where we would want to go back and have those calibrations. And just like the activity that we did a moment there early on with you guys with the photos, we do that in our Leadership Academy. So we say, what do you actually see? Let's take the walkthrough, let's take your matrix, and have that activity. We do it first with a photo, and a little bit later, we actually have everyone stand up with digiCOACH on their phone or their iPad and do a little mock walkthrough with a video lesson and calibrate. Did you see appropriate wait time? Were you seeing engagement building in, things like that? I think that's good enough on the report side. How are we doing time-wise? Doing pretty good. Any questions on any of those reports virtually in the classroom? Looks like we might have a virtual one.
Well, you have questions, comments.
Okay.
But Jody Seldevar, we're not sure if this is Fremont or Fresno It says that FUSD is watching virtually and they think digiCOACH is a wonderful tool.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jody. We just heard your comment from Fresno
Sure.
that digiCOACH is a wonderful tool. We really appreciate that.
Does anybody else want to comment virtually or in person that we're awesome? I'll take it.
Can I have the microphone?
No? Yes?
I just want to ask you,
Okay.
like, so for SIP grantees,
would we get training specifically for our people on this?
So the answer is yes. And digiCOACH, and I don't want to speak for the guys, but they provide that support to every one of their clients. So they have been instrumental in every step of the way. So they've done live webinars, they've done recorded events, they meet with each of the different districts who are participating and support them because everybody's using it in a little bit of a different way, right? Some are rolling out across 5 schools, some are doing 1 school, 1 grade level, and so really meeting our districts where they're at.
I don't think live webinars does it justice. We did
I agree.
the same webinar 6 times in a row.
Yes, yes. Thank you for all of your time, Brandon.
We're there live to ask questions.
Anything else? All right, I'm going to take a few minutes now and talk about some stories from the field, ways that people are implementing, some success stories, what does the data look like. We've been working with Antelope Valley Union High School District, Dr. Joe Kelly, 21st Century Learning Director for 4 years, and their rollout has been very unique. So we started with the administrators, then we went with their instructional partners or coaches, then we did peers, and then Joe called the other day and he says, I'm going to start having students do walks. Is that like the coolest idea? I wish I would have came up with it. Pomona, I want to talk a little bit about Pomona. We've been working with them for 4 years as well. We have districts that call us up a lot saying, we're trying to implement PBIS, but we have this group go this year, this group go this next year. How do we get fidelity? And so we're working with them to how do you create fidelity when you roll out a program for 4 years? And that's what we're going to do with Kristin as well. One of the things we're trying to do is institutionalize digiCOACH at the cabinet level. So if the soup leaves, guess what? The walks still happen. It's a challenge, but we're getting there. We've been working with Inglewood, not for for four superintendents.
2 years.
2 years?
Maybe 3. It's been a...
But we're hanging in there. They're hanging in as well. This is probably my favorite story. So got a call from Dr. Cheryl Hobbs and from Ypsilanti School District, Assistant Superintendent of Ed Services. And she said, I really like digiCOACH. Can you take our Charlotte Danielson summative evaluation and put it into digiCOACH? I'm like, okay, I can do that, just not in California, because we're still, although we're working close with the unions here, and we've not had any union ever say, stop us. So we built on a Likert the Charlotte Danielson summative. They use it 3 times, and then we connected digiCOACH with a yes/no formative evaluation. So we've actually connected formative and summative. That was kind of cool. We've already talked about that one. I was presenting up at AXA about 2000, I think it was January of 12. Dr. Gabe Samakian, the superintendent of Oxnard High School District, was in the front row. And we didn't even have a beta. We hadn't built, it wasn't finished yet. So we were promised a beta, because in software development it's alpha, beta, and then you go live. We didn't even have alpha. It's a true story. It's a kind of a scary story for me. And so we took pictures. We took pictures of the mock-ups, and I'm on stage, 250 superintendents rolling in, and my tech gal at the time hands me an iPad. She says, start swiping. And thank God, Samakian loved it. So we went in, we took his WASP findings. We looked at positive student relationships and increasing student engagement. We did a custom edition for them. That year they did 7,300 walks in 10 high schools. Pretty cool. What happened? That year, 40% reduction in suspension. The average daily attendance district-wide increased 0.9%, brought nearly $1 million to the district. You say, well, how does that work? You know, well, if you get into classrooms daily, you look at positive student-teacher relationships, and the teachers moving around. Hey, we missed you yesterday. Jamie, where were you? Oh, I had something happen. Is everything okay? I'll have you talk to the counselor. So you're proactive, not reactive. She's going to come back to school tomorrow, right? Look at Wainimi. 3.9% that year. And interviewed the administrators. They said, we were in classrooms all the time. We were looking at changing adult behavior by reinforcing. We continue to work with Oxnard High School. They're an AVID demonstration school. That's where we're doing our AVID research. Dr. Riegert, these were his goals. He did his dissertation on closing the achievement gap. The blue line, African American subgroup. Graduation rate. Pretty cool. We don't have the Casey anymore, but look at the ELs and the growth. But my favorite part of this slide, look at the bottom. SPED. Hey, SPED. My first job in education was actually an RSP teacher. We needed the money. My wife at the time, her principal said, hey, come be an RSP teacher. And it was a split assignment. So I worked with small kids, a small group of kids at one school, and then did IEPs. Follow this to do IEPs. I'm like, okay, and I learned. Suspension rate at Oxnard High School over time. Dr. Riegert came in 11-12. Probably my favorite. So Oxnard High School, graduation rate in the back, the other high schools in the front. Is that the last one?
That's it. Other than
Kristin's going to close it up.
So for those of you guys online and in the office here, if you're interested in downloading digiCOACH as we kind of wrap up and you want to explore it a little bit more, it's a free app from App Store or Android Play Store. Or you can just text digiCOACH to 31996 and that'll send you a little link. And then log in, sip@digicoach.com and sip. It'll take about a minute to 2 minutes. If you do it here with the reception that we've been having, it might take about 2 minutes to log in. As long as you got a little spinning wheel, things are going good. But it'll download that data, and then you'll be able to explore that SIP edition. This will put you into a demo account. Feel free to do a walkthrough, put your own email, and CC yourself in there. You can see what that feedback looks like in your own inbox. And know that it's safe. You're not going to send off some teacher some random walkthrough. Like, what was in my classroom? What happened here? No. Thank you, guys.
So just kind of bringing it around for our SIP folks who are participating, that just highly encouraging your participation in the use of this, because this is real world data that is helping inform what we do to support districts across the state, but also right there on the ground with your own folks. We heard about digiCOACH through Antelope Valley when I was working with them on another project. Those suspension, expulsion, graduation rates are real. That's how I got introduced to digiCOACH, and Joe Kelly said, come here, you got to see this. I'm like, but we're talking about this. He's like, no, you got to see this. So we spent quite a bit of time going through, and that's how 9,000 walks last year. That's incredible. Just the fact of getting folks into classrooms, right? We get so siloed, and it's so easy to say, this is my classroom, these are my students, I'm going to shut the door, and I'll see you in the staff lounge at lunch. Right? So how are we collaborating and working together? And Jenny, you had mentioned about, kind of some of those canned responses, right? Sometimes it feels like, oh, I'm just sending a cold email. But everything's so customizable, including all the look-fors that are in the matrix. So that was born out of, I did a crosswalk across 8 or 9 different tools that are out in the field right now about, inclusion checklists and look-fors and best practices and all those things, and looked for some themes, including Danielson's work. And then sat down with the digiCOACH folks and University of Redlands, and we literally sat around the table and said, here's all the information that we have that's out there right now. How do we want this to apply to our project, and what do we say inclusion looks like, or UDL looks like? Because those are the toughest questions, right? What does it look like? Well, it's different in every culture, in every community. And just like Doug said, it's different for the whole unified district. versus one school within that district, right? So that's the beauty of digiCOACH, is you can customize it based on your needs and priorities and look-fors, and then not to taint the data, you're not going to change it along the way in a school year, but as we start to get feedback about, I didn't really understand what evident looked like. I didn't really understand what exemplar meant. I was just sort of clicking, but hopefully we can clarify that for the next edition or the next round. So getting that feedback. But the customization is the key, and very beneficial information that we're yielding using this, and we're seeing the results in the classrooms.
Well, and if I can add one other thing I didn't share, I have 4 older sisters, so I'm the baby, and one of my sisters is deaf, and she went to the California School for the Deaf. It actually started in Indiana, and now in Riverside she came. So we actually are working with them as well to look at how do you help, the California School for the Deaf. So that's another project we're working on.
I fixed it.
There you go.
So any questions as we end our session? Long day of sessions and a lot of information. We know people are probably tired, but as you sort of digest this too, if you have other questions, feel free to contact any of us. Anything obviously digiCOACH specific to the gentleman here, anything SIP related, to me. But anything from the audience or virtually before we wrap up?
Okay.
No?
No one else wants to say I was great.
I became an administrator. I wanted to share it. I became an administrator last year, so this is my second year as an administrator. So I'm evaluating teachers. I think I spend about, just because I want to make it meaningful, I do my retro. So every time I go in, I do follow out with an email or something like that. I spend an average of sometimes 2 to 3 hours. That's just for one teacher, because I want to make sure it's meaningful. And now sometimes you're thinking about it and they're like, okay, and you're writing down. So I kind of created a cheat sheet for me, but this is great.
Thank you.
This is amazing. Yeah.
And I love what Doug shared about students going through, right? And are they seeing the same things? Because we talk about goals that we have for kids and expectations for kids. And so do they know what that looks like? And do they know what we're looking for to improve our practice? So.
Yeah.
So thank you all so much for participating with us live and virtually, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
All right, thank you.